in the pants.
Ants in the pants.
On a recent Wednesday morning, I sat on the floor of a preschool classroom, surrounded by excited kids. They were taking turns catapulting tiny plastic ants into a container shaped like a pair of pants. Their teacher looked on, encouraging them.
Okay, let's see how many ants we have in our pants. How many?
This game, aptly named Ants in the Pants, is a fun way for these young students in Paso Robles to practice a very important math skill: how to count.
Yes, Yada, can I see 3? 3. Diego, can I see 3?
It looked like an average preschool classroom, but there's something a little different happening at Bauer Early Education Center in Paso Robles Joint Unified School District. Like all the classes at Bauer, this is what's known as an inclusive classroom, which means students with disabilities were learning right alongside their non-disabled peers. In California, most preschool students with disabilities are taught in separate classrooms. Parents, educators, and researchers say that this inclusive early education model is beneficial for students who need special education services. Diana Makowetsky, a special education teacher at Bauer, says inclusion is vital for the education and development of young students with disabilities.
For years, we've been saying they need to be in programs with other typically developing kids. They need to be in preschools. They need good language models. They need good social models.
This is Education Beat, getting to the heart of California schools. I'm guest host Emma Gallegos. This week, why inclusive classrooms are important for students with disabilities and for school budgets. As a reporter covering special education for EdSource, I've been looking into the increasing number of inclusive preschool classrooms in California. Last month, I had a chance to visit Bauer Early Education Center in Paso Robles to see what it looks like in action. It's a small campus open to all 3 to 5-year-olds in the Paso Robles Joint Unified District. The room I visited was bright and welcoming. It was lively, but not chaotic. After story time, students broke into small groups where they were coloring, reading, or playing with blocks. One difference that I noticed right away was there were a lot of adults in the classroom. The lead general education teacher, Angelica Martinez, pointed them out to me.
It's myself, there's an assistant teacher, a paraeducator, the SPED lead teacher, she's itinerant, so she's half in here, half in another class. And then the teacher in the back is the lead SPED teacher in another classroom.
Teachers who have a credential in special education co-teach with general education teachers like Angelica. The idea is that they create lesson plans and strategies together for students of all abilities in one classroom, while enabling these students to learn from one another too.
If I were to sit with one kid, we might work on colors, like, oh, I see you're using the green block. But then moving on to the peer next to them, like, can you make a pattern using the green block? So now, they're both hearing patterns or we're both working together. So it's all within play.
This kind of classroom is still not typical in California. Just 33% of students with disabilities receive their preschool education in a classroom with their non-disabled peers. That's behind the national average of 45% of students. And in some states, it's much higher. In Colorado, for example, 93% of disabled students are included in general education classrooms. I spoke with Karen Garver, a policy specialist at the National Institute for Early Education Research. She said excluding students with disabilities from general classrooms runs counter to federal and state laws requiring students with disabilities to be educated in the least restrictive environment possible, alongside their peers. She said there's research showing the benefits of inclusion for students with and without disabilities. The stakes are high in their early years.
There's quite a bit of research showing that once a child is not included, they're almost never included after that. If we're putting children in self-contained settings as preschoolers, we've kind of determined their fate.
A surprising thing I heard over and over from educators and experts in this field is that inclusive classrooms can actually save districts money in the long run. One of the fastest growing costs that school districts are facing is that each year more students are qualifying for special education. In the state budget passed this week, California increased its special education funding by 43% to help districts with these spiraling costs. Moving to an inclusive model takes a lot of time and money for things like professional development or renovating classrooms to make them more accessible. There are state grants encouraging districts to do this hard work. And in 2022, the state created the California Early Childhood Special Education Network to help districts through this process. But some special education finance experts, like Anjanette Pelletier of School Services of California, want to see the state do more. She says districts should be required to create more inclusive classrooms because they are such a good investment. She says this extra money coming from the state budget could be a golden opportunity for schools to not just cover rising costs for special education, but to keep them from ballooning.
We have lots of young learners with lots of needs. And right now, almost none of the revenue generated is targeted at preschool and early childhood experiences. So those are really conundrums that the state and our systems have yet to resolve. Certainly the federal government has not made strong commitments to early childhood education. I personally really believe that investment and leaning into the early childhood education space, providing more service, a deeper range of service, really could have long-term return on investment.
Paso Robles is already seeing this investment pay off. Anjanette has been working with the district and others around the state to share what they have learned. Paso Robles found that students who qualified for special education services in preschool and attended these inclusive classes were more likely to transition to a general education classroom. They needed fewer services, or maybe none at all. Designated special education classrooms are costly, so fewer kids in these classes mean lower costs for the district.
As they invest in preschool and kids get more exposure to language, more exposure to educational support, early intervention, support for pre-literacy, pre-math, they become students who go to a TK classroom that is a general ed TK classroom and not a restricted TK classroom. They're in that TK classroom with some extra support possibly, but they are growing and matriculating up grade by grade. They've been afforded their rightful presence in those general education spaces, and families are happier. There's less litigation, fewer settlements, because the children are making growth.
Preschools are funded very differently than the rest of the TK through 12 system. Funding an inclusive preschool classroom requires districts to navigate a patchwork system of funds that may have complex staffing and licensing requirements, such as the California State Preschool Program. This patchwork system means that where a child attends preschool, in practice, often depends on how much income their family earns or whether they have a disability, even within the same district.
We as a district used to have a state preschool, a gen ed preschool, and our special ed preschools all operating in separate silos.
That's Heather Wahlberg, Director of Early Childhood Education for Paso Robles Joint Unified, who oversees what's happening at Marie Bauer. At some point, district leaders decided the siloed model didn't make sense.
As we finally came together as a district and said, those are all future Bearcats.
Bearcat is the mascot of the Paso Robles High School.
They're being educated in separate buildings by separate departments and by separate teachers and with separate, all of the things. And we don't do that in our older grades.
Across the state in recent years, students have been arriving in kindergarten needing more special education services than they used to. They might have speech issues because of developmental delays or autism. And children who were isolated during the pandemic or spent a lot of time on screens might have had limited opportunities to develop language and social skills. Heather says that early childhood education is helping to address this.
Kindergarten teachers are saying students are coming in with more and more difficulty, regulation and language and peer interaction and fine motor skills and those things that maybe would not meet the level of requiring services when they're 3, but having access to that high quality space early on really sets a foundation that is beneficial as they transition. So we have our TK and kinder teachers will say, we can tell which students have gone to the preschool. We can tell which students have gone to TK.
Grandmother Michelle Robinson has seen firsthand what a difference inclusive early education can make. One of her grandsons attended Marie Bauer and one didn't. The former is her youngest grandson. His name is Everest.
Like the mighty mountain, except he's little. He's 4. If you notice, he's a very small 4-year-old. Yes. He's one of the smallest ones in the class, but he loves it.
When he was younger, Everest struggled to reach certain milestones.
Language was one of the first things that we noticed. He wasn't really talking, and then his motor skills were a little bit delayed. He was born a little bit premature, didn't require NICU stay, but he's always been just a little bit behind, and this has just given him like lots of confidence to go forward.
But Everest's older brother wasn't able to take advantage of the preschool program the same way his little brother did.
Unfortunately, we weren't really aware of it, and he was like, at this age, it was COVID, so everything was kind of shut down. So he did not get that exposure, although he probably would have benefited even more than his younger brother did. Wow. Because he was very premature, and so he didn't have that exposure. He didn't have any preschool, and when he got to kindergarten, it was a challenge for him. So this would have been an excellent program.
But Michelle is hopeful that Everest will be better prepared for transitional kindergarten and then kindergarten.
I have just seen this little guy leaps and bounds. I feel like he's been here for 2 years, but he's just, his confidence and the things that he does and becoming more age appropriate, it's a good start for him to go into TK next year.
Researchers say that preschool is a great time for inclusion because any gaps between students with disabilities and those without them are at their narrowest point. All young students at this age need help with the basics, like communication, stopping one activity and starting another, cooperating with peers. But students with disabilities need even more help. And Diana Makatowski, the special ed teacher, says inclusive classrooms at Marie Bauer are building the foundation for the rest of students' academic careers.
Inclusion is the way to go. I think every district should have their own preschool where they can have kids typically developing in with kids who need extra help. It's just a great way of providing services at this age, at any age, but especially at preschool, because the gap between the skills, is closer because they're so young. Once they get older, they're going to be falling, hopefully not, but sometimes they fall farther behind. And if they're getting pulled out. So we love that we do it all here with everybody.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Education Beat, Getting to the Heart of California Schools, a production of EdSource. You can find a link to my story in our podcast notes and at edsource.org. Our producer is Coby McDonald. Special thanks to the teachers and staff of Paso Robles Joint Unified District and our editor-at-large, John Fensterwald. Our theme music is from Blue Dot Sessions. This episode was brought to you by the Bauer Group and the LA Partnership for Early Childhood Investment. I'm guest host Emma Gallegos. Host Sadie Stavely will be back next week. Please subscribe so you won't miss an episode.